masculine energy man needs to be in his feminine energy in order to be whole in a relationship. Hello, my name is Chengi. I am your dating and relationship expert, founder and CEO of Black Swan Relationship Academy, course creator, and all things fantastic for those of you in dating and relationships, especially for you high value, high status, high worth women who want to be with a high value masculine man. If that's for you and it sounds good to you, then you're on the right channel and you are watching the right video. Okie dokie, so I look forward to seeing you on the Nice Girl Rehab. Link is in the description. Finally, it is here. Book your free seat, lady. Woo woo! I want to see you on there. We are going to be having real conversations on this call that will transform not only your dating life, but will transform your relationships in general. Okie dokie, so without further ado, let's get into today's title. See, the truth of the matter, ladies, is that often we have come to understand masculine energy in one way. The truth is, as we explore the masculine and feminine principle on this channel and through different channels, we of course can sometimes err to the side of extremity, and I just wanted to bring a little bit of balance into the conversation so that we really know how certain things show up. The truth of the matter is, you don't want to be in a relationship with a man who is perpetually sitting in his masculine energy, who's perpetually in that state of masculine energy without ever leaning into his feminine energy within the context of the relationship. What we want is a man that sits primarily and predominantly in his masculine energy, but resources from his feminine energy in order for him to be a great lover, a great friend, a confidant, and a great person to generally be around. And this only happens when we make room and make space for a man to lean into his feminine energy and to kind of connect with us, because feminine energy in a man is useful for so many reasons. As we're going to look at that in this video, about the areas in which a man needs to be feminine and the times when the feminine has to hold space for the masculine to come into her space and just, you know, live there for a little bit so that he can be renewed and rejuvenated. Often what we call toxic masculinity is often the wounded feminine in the man, the feminine that was not allowed to have expression when he was young, that emotional side of him that was stifled and not given room to express itself is often, you know, if he was traumatized as a result or he wasn't allowed to express his deepest emotions, often he can be carrying a lot of wounded feminine energy, in which case we can see manifestations of toxic masculinity, extremity, everything being rigid and incapable of actually healing or expressing himself. It is important that men are able to lean into their feminine energy in order for them to relate better, in order for them to, because feminine energy is responsible for relating. Feminine energy is the relationship energy, and masculine energy is the resourceful energy. That's the energy that go get stuff, okay? But feminine energy is designed to be relational, and so a man does at some point need to lean into his feminine in order to connect, in order to create intimacy, and also to be creative and to really show up in his emotional state. We all complain about, you know, a lot of wives complain about their husbands not opening up to them and feeling like he doesn't want to talk about what's bothering him, but often this is because his feminine has been stifled or he's been made wrong to lean into his feminine. So I want to help those of us who are dating and in relationships with the masculine energy man who may be shut off, unwilling perhaps to open up, but also for those of us who are starting off. We have to be honest that within the 21st century, the average masculine man has in some way been taught to embrace more feminine energy than we would feel comfortable with for the most part. I think with all of the men should be more emotional and men should have rights too and men should be treated equally and all of the stuff that has happened as we have sort of began to neutralize the feminine and masculine principle. We do have men that are overly in their feminine energy and therefore we kind of get a little bit repulsed. But I'm really talking about the masculine energy guy who just needs us to hold space for him to express himself within the feminine. And what that means is that we don't necessarily bounce into the masculine. To hold space for the masculine to feel feminine doesn't necessarily mean that we then have to go into the masculine. Just as you have your girlfriends, you stay in your feminine, she stays in her feminine, and you have this amazing equal communication, this amazing equal energy. You are in equal energy, so you can create a friendship, but because you're not trying to sleep with each other, you're not trying to create chemistry of any sort, you can both be in feminine. At this time when the masculine man is stepping into his feminine in order to connect, this is the energy that you're looking for. Yes, it's not going to be sexually attractive to you because now we're both holding the same space, but what it will do is allow for the relationship to grow in intimacy and deeper connection, because that's what we want at the end of the day. And if a masculine man feels like he cannot be vulnerable and connect with you in the relationship, that you are not a safe space for him emotionally, you will struggle to get him to commit. And if you have got him to commit, you will struggle to get him to commit to the relationship emotionally in the way that you would want him to. So I wanted to just bring some balance into this conversation and really talk about the areas where it is perfectly okay for us to hold space for the masculine to kind of share our space in the feminine. And we have to remember that the feminine gives and allows the man to heal, to soothe himself. The feminine is the soothing energy. It is the nurturing energy. And sometimes, you know, it's important for a man to be able to soothe himself and to be able to nurture himself. And in order to do that, he has to step into his feminine energy. So what are some of the ways? Number one, to express his emotions. For a man to express his emotions, he has to lean into his feminine energy. He's got to feel safe to lean back and into himself, because often masculine energy is very outward. It's very, what do I do? What do I have? What do I get? And often defines its value is defined by the value of what it does. Masculine energy is validated by doing, and feminine energy is validated by being. Okay, so for him to be able to express his emotions, even for him to be able to say I love you, he's got to be comfortable to go into himself. And some of us are waiting for those 3 magic words, I love you, from the guy that we're dating or seeing or in a relationship with. And in order for that to happen, he needs to know that you are an emotionally safe space for him to lean in and express his emotions. So how does he know that you're an emotionally safe space for him to explore his emotions? He knows that by how you handled him emotionally previously. Okay, when he shared an emotion, did you roll your eyes? Did you give him that oh my god energy? How did you respond to him when he was vulnerable with you, maybe even over a small thing? Or maybe he showed a great deal of frustration and you know, it felt like it was a little bit, you know, a lot. Were you able to hold space for him and listen and say, you know what, I understand that you're frustrated, and just allow him to express himself? Or was there kind of a come on, get it together, you're a man? Was he able to come back one day, not always jovial, feeling a little bit low, and found that you were accommodating, that you were willing to almost let him lay his head on your laps and just soothe him a little bit? Or did you kind of ask him to snap out of it, right? Because sometimes we don't always respond well to a man expressing his emotions. And if the first time he did express his emotions to you, he was punished for it or judged for it, he is going to be less willing to do so in the future. Because what we do when we don't know how to truly respond to a man being emotional, you know, we're quite happy with our girlfriends being emotional, but we're not comfortable with a man having a moment where he is in his emotions and is acknowledging what is happening on the inside of him. And you know, we need to be able to hold space and show empathy and understanding in that time. I'm not talking about a man that is overly emotional all the time. I read in the comments one time one of you ladies who was like, you know, my guy, you know, would go to bed weeping and I would have to cradle him like a baby almost every night. This is a man that is dealing with trauma. These are extreme situations. If he's always in his emotions, if he's always, you know, wanting to fight and always everything is a battle, then we have issues of trauma that probably need to be addressed. And this is not what I am talking about. I'm talking about moments really of him being a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open about his emotions, and us as feminine women holding space for him to be able to do that. So we need to be really careful. A man will need to lean into his feminine energy for him to be creative about the kind of dates that he takes you on, to be creative about you know, how he's going to create wealth, to be creative about, you know, about the things, even to paint, to be a designer. It's perfectly okay. Sometimes we feel like, okay, usually men in the arts tend to lean more into their feminine energy because the artistic world requires a vast amount of creativity, and creativity belongs to the feminine flow. It is a feminine energy. It comes out of the feminine energy. And so men who are, you know, in the creative space, in fashion and styling and, you know, in art, tend to lean heavily into their feminine energy in order to create. But this doesn't mean that they are leaning or sitting in feminine energy all the time. In the same way as many of us who work in corporate world, who are in business, like some of us SWANs, who are go-getters, making things happen, we can sit in our feminine energy, but we really have to be in masculine energy for a good chunk of time. But it doesn't mean that when we're in a relationship, we are showing up masculine. And so it's really important that we are able to embrace a man who is creative, an actor, a painter, a decorator, you know, men who do express themselves very, very creatively in order for us to nurture creativity within our relationships. Some of us struggle and say, you know, I wish I had a man that would, you know, plan something amazing. All of that is creative energy. It's thinking outside of the box, planning something that you wouldn't have, you know, that he would have come up with. That takes him leaning very much into his feminine energy, but we have to make it okay and safe for a man to create new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, to create beautiful things, to be a florist, to be an artist, to be a painter, to be a gardener. We have to hold space for him to be creative and validate his creativity if we want to see that creativity flow within the context of our relationships, right? And this is so important if we want to reap the benefits of a man tapping into his creativity. He also needs to lean into his feminine energy to be vulnerable. And I discussed that a little bit with expressing his emotions, but there's the difference between expressing our emotions and having vulnerable energy, allowing a man allowing his guard to be down. You know, some of us are in relationships with men who seem always armored, never letting their guard down. In order for a man to be vulnerable, he has to lean into his feminine energy or resource from his feminine energy. And in that moment, we have to hold space for him to be vulnerable and not judged and not, you know, looked at as weak. But in this moment, you know, a happy home is a home where a man comes home and he walks through the front doors and he can slouch a little bit and be like, okay, it's been a long day. I can be safe here. I can come in here and be safe. And for those of you who are dating and in relationships, it doesn't necessarily have to be home, but we as the feminine have to hold space, and you have to be that place where he can feel defeated and go out there and be a champion, but come home and feel a little bit defeated and be able to share that, even if he's not articulating it, you know, you are able to see that he's feeling defeated, and instead of you know, sort of judging or coming up with conclusions or trying to fix it, because he doesn't need you to fix it. He just needs to feel validated in that moment and in that space, and to feel supported emotionally. And I think as women, sometimes we don't realize how much emotional support men need, not in the form of do this or do that to fix it, because that's us now leaning into the masculine, but really saying, okay, I hear you, I see you, I understand you, and it is okay for you to feel this way in this moment, and still see from my eyes and from my energy that I truly, truly still respect you as the leader and as the man. For a man, the next point is for a man to be passive, to allow things to just be, to let you be the flittering, floating butterfly that he doesn't control, that he doesn't try to bring into order. He has to be able to lean into his feminine energy, because feminine energy is passive. And sometimes we want our men to be passive. We don't want them to constantly be picking on everything that we do and constantly controlling every narrative in our relationship. We want them to sometimes be passive. Just let us be who we are. Let us be loud, and let us be silly, and let us wear what we want to wear. That is that passive energy that a man has to lean into his feminine energy in order for him to be passive. And we need to make it okay for a man to be passive. We need to make it okay for him not to have an opinion about everything that we're wearing or how we're looking, or, you know, not constantly putting pressure on him to always be actively engaging in everything that we do. It's okay for him to just watch us do our thing and not have anything to necessarily say or contribute to what is going on. And you know, that's a good thing, and we need to make space for that. For a man to show patience, he has to lean into his feminine energy, because patience is part of the virtue of the feminine. It is passive, patient, it is vulnerable. And so for him to be more patient and more tolerant and allow us to take our time to get to where we need to get to, that's him leaning into his feminine energy. Because masculine energy is so goal orientated, is so now orientated, is so achievement, competitive orientated, that often a man has to lean into his feminine and find rest within his feminine energy for him to show up as a patient man. And feminine energy, this is not last, the second from last, he needs to be able to lean into his feminine energy in order to receive. Now this is a big one, because as we talk about masculine feminine principle, and we understand that the masculine is the giver, the provider, and the cherisher, the protector, the provider. Often we lock men into that box. It is your job to give. It is your job to provide. It's your job to protect. It is your job to cherish. But I want to announce to you today that the masculine also needs us to give, protect, and cherish. Sometimes we need to reverse the roles. So let's talk about the bedroom. Often that is the place where couples don't mind switching roles. You know, some of us girls, you know, at some point the man wants to lie back and let you do all the work, okay, and we're quite okay with that. When it comes to the bedroom, we're good to sort of lead for peace, you know, before we run out of breath. But at the end of the day, when we are socially dating outside of the bedroom, we have an issue with sometimes taking the lead. Yes, ladies, even as a feminine woman, there is a time when you need to plan something special for him. Sometimes there is a need for you to pay for that date, plan that date, and you know, surprise him with a gift, something that you know that he loves. Spoil him, and maybe just do something really special for him. You know, the masculine man doesn't want that all the time. He doesn't crave it all the time. But as a feminine woman, sometimes we do need to take charge and take lead romantically too. Sometimes we just need to say, hey babe, I've got this. I've got your back, I got this. Even when you're with a man that is more than happy to play that part and that role, because his feminine needs to be cherished too, and his feminine needs to receive gifts, to receive love, to just be in the receptive. And this is why, for those of you in relationships, men always complain, why do I always have to initiate sex? Why do I always have to be the one initiating? Because sometimes the feminine in him would like to be approached too. This only works, of course, in relationships, girls. I'm not advising you to go and approach a guy, but even when you are dating with a man, it's okay when you don't get that morning text to be the first one to say, good morning, hope you slept well, just thinking about you. We don't always have to put the burden on him 100% of the time. We have to understand that there is the feminine on the inside of him, and that feminine also needs all the things that we want all the time, so that we want to encourage the feminine in him to stay healthy, to stay heard, because we then reap the benefits of it. You know, we don't want to be in a situation where you are not allowed to be ever feminine. We want to create a space and hold space. And a masculine man is not going to be comfortable staying in that space. He's going to want out at some point, and he's going to feel some kind of way if you do it too often. But he will 100% appreciate it when you make room. In the same way as us as working, successful business women, go-getters, you know, educated women, you know, we want a man that can hold space for us in that space, who can in that moment allow us to be smarter than him, cleverer than him, right? Teach him something, show him something. We love it when we're in a relationship with a guy and for a minute he holds space for us to teach him something, to educate him on something, to be smarter than him, and for him to really give us that gift of, yeah, I didn't know that, you're really very smart, rather than constantly, you know, being in a position where he doesn't let us be smarter, or he feels emasculated when we're smarter. It's not that we need to have this all the time, but it is nice and it feels good when a man can hold that space within his masculinity for you to be in your masculine, and for you to occupy that space, and him not feel intimidated, not feel like he has to argue with you about it. In the same way as we enjoy a man that enjoys our mind, it's also important that we are able to allow a man to enjoy it when a man is enjoying his emotions, for it to be okay for him to be basking in emotional spaces and places and feel safe, and we don't feel like, hey, come out of my territory, be a man, right? When it's okay for him to just be vulnerable with us in this moment, and for us to still look at him with respect and still think he's a great guy, and let him know and feel that. So it's really important that we don't just sit back and say, well, your job is to give, protect and cherish, but to realize that they also want to be nurtured in a specific way, just like we love it when a man makes room for us to be masculine as well. And last but definitely not least, he also needs to rest and relax. For a man to really sit back, lean and decompress completely, he has to lean into his feminine energy. He has to be able to do that. And so we need to be able to create a place and a space where a man can rest and relax. And this was the power of Delilah. It wasn't that she was the most beautiful woman on the earth. It's not because she was just the most exciting woman that that Samson could have possibly been with, but the Bible tells us that he always found a place to lay his head. He would always lay his head on her laps. And as strong and as powerful as this man was, and as masculine as we can definitely say Samson was, a deep and profound warrior, in biblical history, he needed, what she provided for him was a safe space for him to be feminine, a safe space for him to lay his head, a safe space for him to be relaxed. She made room for him to not be necessarily this iconic classical masculine man that just had to be strong all the time, in and through all things. But because she really managed to create a place and a space where he could rest and relax within her company, within her space, she became the most powerful and profound woman ever in his life. That unfortunately caused his demise. Obviously, we are not trying to cause their demise, but we do want to be the number one girl in their lives. We do want to be the one that he cherishes the most, the one who he will never find another woman better than us, or even if he finds another woman attractive or can see the virtues in another woman, he has something in us and with us that we have created that is on a deeper, more emotional, more spiritual level. This is how we can be confident and certain in our relationships, when we can create these spaces for men, when we can create these safe emotional places for their feminine energy to come out and play and to be healed and to have expression within their masculine world, then we then represent way more to him than just a pretty face or a feminine woman or a woman who has everything to offer him. We become different and we read psychologically and emotionally to him on a way deeper level. So I hope this video was really very helpful for you, and I hope that you understand what I am trying to create, and we're just trying to bring in some balance in this conversation as we understand the masculine and feminine principle. I look forward to seeing you in my next video, but in the meantime, take care of you, and I'll see you at Nice Girl Rehab Masterclass. Yes, I'll see you soon. Love you lots. Bye bye now.